So, one of the common themes that I often hear when I'm talking to other guys about their mental wellness is the challenge that many of us face in opening up in certain environments. To be clear, the environment, the culture, the atmosphere, whatever term you want to place on it, must make you feel safe. And this feeling of safety can be one of the keys to help access certain areas of our lives where we can learn, heal, and grow. It reminds me of a Bible story about David, and he was on the run. He was accused and berated by a leader he trusted, and he finds himself in this cave. During that time, the Bible records that hundreds that were outcast from society, they came to him for help. And I believe that part of the reason that this happened is because David was able to create a safe space for people to be able to open up. Now, these are the same environments that we need in our times. And I want to look at 3 ways that we can create and nurture this type of environment. Number 1, safety and non-judgment are a top priority, and they're not negotiable. Let's face it, we're living in a world that makes it so much easier than ever for us to judge everyone around us. We get bombarded by information, updates on what everyone else is doing, how much better everyone else is doing, how much better everyone looks, how perfect that they look, and everything they're doing. And we know that much of this stuff that we see oftentimes is probably not really reality, but it doesn't help alleviate some of the insecurities that arise from being in such a judgmental world. Oftentimes, cultural norms, they just add some of the fuel to the fire. And in the case of men dealing with their mental well-being, it becomes challenging to find spaces that really just offer the safety and just being in a non-judgmental zone. On this podcast, I did an interview with a good friend of mine, and he shared how as men, we'll throw out these feelers to other guys. We'll just maybe ask some questions related to your health. We might go to a guy and be like, hey, how you sleeping, man? Everything is good? Man, I've been trying to get better sleep. I've been just trying to work on my relationship or work on this aspect of my relationship. And what we're really doing is we're just really trying to feel out the other guy. We want to know if this other person, this other guy who I respect and who I want respect from is struggling with some of the same things that I'm struggling with. Because usually on the outside, the other guys around us, they look so put together. A lot of times it seems that the friends that we know and the guys that we know and the circles that we're a part of, it seems sometimes that all the people around us look like they have everything together. And so I got to throw out these little feelers to see whether or not it's safe for me to talk about what I need to talk about. And so it's so crucial for us as we develop these type of environments. And I believe that we're really on the frontier of talking about these type of issues, really diving into these type of issues. I know even me personally on our podcast, I've talked about issues about things that have happened in the church and things that can happen in the church and being in those environments. And I think now more than ever, especially after what we've experienced in the pandemic, that we have to learn how to create these spaces for men to be able to talk about this, right? So number 1, that first step is really creating that safety and a non-judgment zone, and that has to be a non-negotiable for a lot of men. Number 2, don't force them to talk if they're not ready to talk. God, for the most part, if you really think about it, man, for most of us as men, when we're ready to talk, that's usually when we'll open. We're gonna talk when we're ready to talk. Because I mentioned on a video before, a lot of times I might be upset about something and I don't know actually even how to articulate what I'm feeling. I don't understand how to say or put it into words what I'm dealing with and what I'm feeling. And so for a lot of men, we just got to get to a point where we got to be ready to talk. I read this awesome study from a group called the Priority Group, and they're based out of the UK, and they conducted this study of a whole lot of men. I think it was several thousand men. And it said that 40% of men will not talk about their mental health. I'll put a link down in the description below. And I thought that was so fascinating, because when you really think about creating these safe spaces, we have to be able to get into a space or be in a space where it's going to allow us to want to open up and really ask those questions and talk about what's bothering us. Going back to the example that I was using about throwing out some of those feelers, you may be able to get a guy to share some snippets and bits of information about what's going on or what's bothering him, but it's really only going to be limited to what he's willing to share. Oftentimes, I feel like this can happen because of a couple of reasons. Most times, like I said before, we don't know how to put those things into words. The majority of us, we didn't grow up with any kind of emotional intelligence. We didn't grow up learning how to communicate how we were feeling or the needs that we had. The majority of us as men, we grow up learning how to express those emotions through competition or performance or doing things physically. And then the second part of that is sometimes we just don't feel safe enough sharing that information yet. As a man, I might not want to let you into that part of my life, even though I know it needs help, even though I know it needs healing. I don't want you to see those parts of me because I may fear that you might look at me as less of a man, or I may fear that you might now think that I had it all together, but when you hear about the things that I'm struggling with or the things that I may share, you might look at me in a different light. And this is what also ties into it needing to be a non-judgmental and a safe space. And the third thing for us to be able to do as I wrap this up, in order for us to create a more open environment, is that we simply just have to listen. Listen, if you're helping a man and they have come to the point where they're sharing with you what they're going through and they're expressing with you, it's because on some level they feel safe, right? Take that time to make sure that you're hearing what they say. There's an author, his name is David Asperger. He said, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're almost indistinguishable. I'd like to believe that's true for men just as much as it is for anybody else. Over these few recent years and in talking with men, dealing with different things, I've realized that there's a lot of us that have been looking for and really just seeking that place where we can go to really find that safety in our lives in order to be able to share some of the things that we're going through. The bottom line is that every one of us, whether we're men, whether we're women, we all need a space where we can feel safe and we can be allowed to open up about what we need help with. The last few years of experiencing the pandemic, it's revealed to us so much that we need each other for community in order to learn, heal, and grow. And as I wrap up, if you're a guy or someone that needs to find a safe space like this, check out Recreated Man. This is a community that we just created to help men find a safe space and get some of the tools that they need on their mental health journey. And I'll make sure I put a link in the description. This has been Nick with the Life Recreated podcast. Let's keep creating these open environments for us to be able to share these things. Let's take these things away and apply them to the communities that we know. And until next time, keep learning, keep healing, and keep growing.